Scotland's stories are the stories of the world. Every year, more and more people visit the country of their ancestors. The descendants of Scots who left these shores over the last 400 years are drawn back time and time again to learn about their ancestors' lives and the places they came from.
An ancestral tourist is someone who's interested in their Scottish roots. They're interested in finding out about the history and their heritage and where they come from. There's a huge demand now for an interest in ancestral roots in Scotland.
There are about 50 million people worldwide who claim Scottish ancestry, from Australia and New Zealand, through Europe to the USA and Canada. Archives tell our stories, enrich our lives, connect us with the past, and give us a sense of identity. Whether searching online or visiting an archive in person, the ancestral tourist can learn an extraordinary amount of detail about their ancestors' lives and the places where they once lived.
Archives are an incredibly important way in building on your adventures and investigations in tracing your family tree. For many people, past generations who lived hundreds of years ago are a very abstract idea. They want to know how they connect to the modern day. How do we know where they lived, what they ate, how they dressed? All of these things can be told through archival material. Just look at maps and plans. It shows you how the towns, the villages changed where people lived. Look at architectural drawings. They will tell you how buildings evolved. So really, it embodies somebody. It makes them a 3D figure, and you get to really know and understand who your ancestors were.
People come with an expectation of what they're looking for. Some go back completely fulfilled. And it's not just about the being where the family belonged, it's just the whole richness of Scottish history, heritage and culture. So they want to immerse themselves in Scotland. A particular recent research that I did for a client was Liz contacted me, and she had a very unusual middle name.
I'm Liz Everett, and I have inherited a very unusual name which has come down through my family. And it's Vair, V-A-I-R, and it's always fascinated me because it has come down the line. So I wanted to find out more, so I engaged a professional genealogist to research it for me.
Liz had been born in Cardiff. Her immediate relatives were from London, from Yorkshire and Northamptonshire. And however, using that trail, I managed to bring the family line back to the Scottish borders. And it was there that I eventually tracked down the Vair family. They had been weavers in and around Darnick, which is near Melrose, and from there managed to trace them to Selkirk.
You can find lots of resources and guides online to help you on your ancestral journey. Or you can ask an archivist, a local historian or a tourism expert for advice.
Doing the research for Liz, it was carried out partly online, but the majority of the research was actually done in archives in Edinburgh and in the Scottish borders.
For people who would like to trace their family history in Scotland, the best place to begin is Scotland's People. Wherever you are in the world, you can access the records from Scotland's People online. Many of these are actually free to view. If you come to the Scotland's People Centre here in Edinburgh or others in Scotland, you can pay a fee to sit at a computer for the whole day and look at unlimited records.
To help Liz learn more about the Vair surname, Ian contacted Tahisha McKee, an expert in genealogical studies at the University of Strathclyde. Ian and Tahisha invited Liz to travel to the Scottish borders to reveal their findings.
So Liz, we've arrived in Melrose. This is one of the areas that your ancestors lived many centuries ago. What I've got here for you, I've got a few documents. Now, Margaret Vair your ancestor, your great-great-grandmother. You recall she married Andrew Leslie. Now, I've done a wee bit of research into Andrew Leslie and found he was master aboard the Duke of Abercorn. So this was the Duke of Abercorn. It was built in 1869. Now, sadly for Andrew, he died aboard. Now, I found his death certificate here, and he died in 1891, and it's actually given us the coordinates of where he died.
He'd come up with actual certificates showing how one of the Vair's husband, he'd risen through the ranks in about 6 years. So I learned about that, and Tahisha told me about how even in the space of one generation of weavers, they went from being artisan, handloom specialist craftspeople to the start of the Industrial Revolution.
One of the things that I really found out was about weaving, and of course weaving is such a key prime thing in the Borders area, and there's no doubt that weaving was in your family line, absolutely. So Margaret herself was a weaver. Yeah. Margaret's father, James, was in the 1841 census. His father was employed as a woolen handloom weaver, as was he. One of the things about the change in technology and industry is that 1840s through to the 1870s, there's a massive change from people doing weaving by hand to weaving by machine. I find this interesting. You can see in your family this transition from handloom weaving to powerloom weaving, the younger generation taking that on board and moving through. So it's a classic family for that. It's really cool.
And it just shows the difference between the two families, the Vairs and the Leslies, how one was very much based in the Borders, whereas the Leslies travelled, but always came back between sailings to their roots in the Borders.
All these interesting extras that you find out about, not just names and dates. So much more than you would expect. Names come to life. That's the really special thing.
The group visits Selkirk Cemetery, the burial place of Liz's ancestors. Graveyards can be sad places, but they are also full of history and the stories of real people who lived in the past.
In the graveyard at Selkirk, and I'm feeling quite apprehensive, quite nervous, and I think I'm going to be quite emotional very soon. My family name has come down through generations, so this is an exciting moment.
So Liz, this is the end of your journey. We're now approaching the grave of Andrew Leslie and Margaret Vair.
Wow.
Your 2 times great-grandparents. And you can see Andrew Leslie, his wife Margaret, and buried with them are 2 of the children, Andrew, Thomas, and Ellen Jane.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's always interesting to see how research impacts on a client. Some become very emotional.
I've gone from a journey for asking someone to do research on a name that's beloved to me and my family, to getting information on bits of paper, but it's when you come here and see the actual headstone and find out more about your family, and they're here. That's very emotional.
For me, it's a real privilege to be part of a client's journey and to share with them their heritage.
If you visit Scotland to learn about your ancestors, you will not be disappointed. You can expect breathtaking scenery, a warm welcome, and a million stories. Stories which are there to be retold in the archives, in manuscripts, official papers, personal letters, films, photographs, and all the rich and amazing records in our country's documented past.